What is up, YouTube? It's your boy Millsy, back with Hometown Commander, back for an episode of $50 Upgrade, the show where I take a Precon and give you what I would do with $50 to upgrade the Precon. And since we're talking about Bloomburrow, we're in Bloomburrow release week, why wouldn't we be talking about Bloomburrow? And today we're talking about Bello, Bard of the Brambles, the commander of the animated army deck. Bello is a 3-mana Gruul Raccoon Bard. It says, during your turn, each non-equipment artifact and each non-aura enchantment you control with mana value 4 or greater is a 4/4 elemental in addition to its other types, has indestructible haste, and whenever it deals combat damage to a player, we draw a card. My regular brew for Bello with a more unlimited, with a larger budget is going to be up on the channel as well. I'm going to have a link to that in the description below. But Bello is one of the 4 precons that interests me the most. I'm a Gruul player. I love doing some Smash, and so Bello is one that I'm going to be trying myself. So you're interested in more of a higher power upgrade there, you'll see it over on the channel. But today we're going to talk about how I would spend my $50 to make this deck better. And I think we're going to make this deck a lot better than it currently sits. So we're going to go through our ads. I'll go through what I took out. I'm not going to go through every card that I took out, but I'm going to kind of give you the gist of why I took certain cards out. And then we're going to do a little play test of the deck with the $50 added to kind of show you what we're targeting here. Asceticism just seems like a card that makes sense. A 5-mana enchantment that would get animated, that gives all of our creatures hexproof, and then we can pay 2 mana to regenerate target creature. Why I think things like asceticism are really important for this deck is to protect Bello. At the end of the day, Bello is the thing that makes this deck work on our turn and is the reason that we're hitting hard. So why not try to give natural ways to protect Bello if we can. Besage Reaches Skyward is a 4-mana saga that says on its first one, you get up to 2 basic forests, reveal them, put them in your hand, then shuffle. On the second lore counter, we put up to 1 target land from our graveyard on top of our library. When we get to 3, we exile it and we turn it over. On the backside, it is a 0/0 creature that gets +1/+1 for each land we control. Well, with Bello, that backside is actually going to turn to a 4/4 that gets +1/+1 for each land we control, and it becomes a decent little attacker on a backside. City on Fire is an expensive 8-mana enchantment, but we can convoke it out. But if a source you control would deal damage to a permanent or player, it deals triple that damage instead. And you're going to see a little bit of a theme with that. We're adding on to the gratuitous violence that's already in the precon, but we're also adding Fire Emancipation, the same ability, just for 6 mana. Enchantress's Presence, whenever we cast an enchantment spell, we draw a card. Again, I'm pushing my brew more towards enchantments because I think there's a lot better combat enchantments than there are artifacts, and so things like Enchantress's Presence are just going to help us draw a few extra cards and get us more gas on our way towards smashing our opponents. Gruul War Chant, all attacking creatures we control have +1/+0 and Menace. This means without any of their abilities, this is making those 4/4s into 5/4s with Menace Indestructible. I mean, this is, again, just going to become very difficult for our opponents to deal with and going to have to force them to have less things to chump block with. I think Menace is one of those things that's going to really push us forward into ending the game that way. Gruul Warplow is a artifact that says all of our creatures gain trample. This means that now all they are with 4/4s with trample, meaning hopefully we can start hitting in for more damage. Nature's Will is one half of the combo. The reason that I'm not showing the other half is I ended up adding an odd number of cards, but Nature's Will is an enchantment that says whenever one or more creatures you control deal combat damage to a player, tap all lands that player controls and untap all lands you control. This is one half of a very powerful combo in this deck with a card called Aggravated Assault. It's a 3-mana enchantment that for 5 mana you can take another combat this turn. Basically, with Nature's Will, as long as you connect with any of your creatures, you're going to untap all your lands, pay for Aggravated Assault, and just go into infinite combats. And since all your 4/4s have indestructible, I have a tough time believing you won't just end the game with infinite combats in going through that. If that's not the vibe you want, just keep Aggravated Assault out. I would recommend you keep Nature's Will in because I think it's going to help you with untapping your lands and playing more things. But I can understand maybe if you don't want that infinite combats thing in your deck with your play group. Shared Animosity says whenever a creature we control attacks, it gets +1/+0 for each attacking creature that shares a type with it. Because all of these are elementals, the more than we have, the bigger that buff is, and we're trying to get lots of ways to give them trample in the deck, meaning they are going to hit hard. Sight of the Scale Lord says at the beginning of combat on our turn, creatures we control with toughness 4 or greater get +2/+2 and gain vigilance till end turns. They become 6/6s with vigilance. Again, great attackers. Street Riot, all of our creatures get +1/+0 and trample on our turn, and again, it animates. I think the thing to remember about things like Street Ride is there are cheaper ways to give our whole board trample mana-wise, but again, we also want it to be a creature. We want it to be another 4/4 that we can attack with, and that becomes really important. The Immortal Sun, a 6-mana artifact, says players can't activate Planeswalker loyalty abilities. This is kind of awkward because we do have Domri that's already in the Precon, but again, I think it's worth giving up our one Planeswalker to stop some of the things. At the beginning of our draw step, draw an additional card, pay 1 less for all of our spells, and all of our creatures get +1/+1. Just a house of value by itself, and it turns into a 4/4. Then we have the Skullspawn Nexus. This is mainly in here to be a creature itself. If any of our other enchantments or creatures die, we get tokens to replace them, which is great. And for 2 mana, we can double creature's power until end of turn, meaning we can maybe get in for some big damage. And then I'm not playing a ton of vehicles in the deck. There are going to be people who take this deck and completely spin it towards vehicles because Bello will actually animate the vehicles. But the reason that I'm playing Thunderhawk Gunship is its ability. When it comes in, it makes you 2 tokens, which is kind of neither here nor there, but the important part is the bottom ability. Whenever it attacks, attacking creatures you control get flying until end of turn. This is going to mean that we can get all of those artifacts and enchantments that we animated into the air, make them harder to block, and get in for damage more importantly. So Thunderhawk Gunship is well worth its cost because it's going to help us hit harder for our opponents. As far as our removal goes, a lot of this deck is trying to streamline towards artifacts and enchantments that we animate, right? I think this deck is plenty fine on mana, which is why I'm taking out things like Burnished Heart and Evolving Wilds. I really don't think we're going to have a hard time with it. If you think you're having a hard time with it, you're more than welcome to try to bring like things like that back in. I would rather focus on land ramp spells like Rampant Growth or Farseek or Nature's Lore rather than something like Burnished Heart, but that's just me. The reason is we can't animate the Burnished Heart, make it 4/4 because it's not the right mana value, and it's a little expensive for me in what it's trying to do, but this is a Precon, and we have to remember at the end of the day, the Precons have cards to fill out the 99, whether they're efficient or not. I would just rather focus on more efficient things. Now, with Brightcap Badger, this is a card I actually don't mind. The adventure makes 2 Saprolings, and when it comes down, it gives all your Saprolings the ability to tap for a green, and at the beginning of your end step, you make another Saproling. I like the idea of this card. You're making Saprolings that can tap for mana. It makes a ton of sense. It's a good card, and I expect this card to see a lot of play in other decks, but for this deck, for what we're trying to do, I just don't see it being worth it. I think at the end of the day, we want to focus on hitting hard and getting through our opponents rather than this is going to seem terrible for me to say, but I don't really want to get cute with something like this. I'd rather just punish my opponents and hit hard in Gruul, and that's just me. If you like Brightcap Badger, keep it in. I think it's a house of value on its own. It's just not what I would want from the deck. Same thing with something like Felwar Stone. The deck does have a couple of these 2-mana artifacts for mana. Again, I just don't think we need them, but if you want them, keep them in. Greater Good, interesting idea for a card in this deck, because it does animate, right? But you sack a creature, draw cards equal to its power, and then discard 3 cards. I don't think we're going to have a problem drawing cards. I like Greater Good. It just isn't the deck I'd want for Greater Good. Grothama was a card I'd thought about for at least once. Other creatures have when this creature attacks, you may have it fight Grothama. And when Grothama leaves the battlefield, each player draws cards equal to the amount of damage dealt to Grothama this turn by sources they control. I've never understood why Grothama is so as coveted as it is. I guess I can understand why it's in this deck, but I don't. I just don't see a reason for it. Other reprints of the deck like Galta or Goreclaw make a ton of sense. They're big creatures. They're going to punish our opponents hard like we want to in Gruul. Grothama is just a card that I do not understand why it's in that Precon. It's not a card I love to begin with, but I don't get it, and I'd rather take it out for another thing I can animate and push towards my strategy. Same thing we talked about with Felwar on the Mind Stone. Lotus Cobra is at least makes sense when a land comes in to get an animated color. It's a great reprint. Take it, sell it, get some money back for it. Outpost Siege, I like the idea of it. It's something that animates, right? And you get a decent choice. At the beginning of your upkeep, you can exile the top card and play it, or whenever a creature leaves the battlefield, it deals 1 damage to any target. Like, I get it. It's an inedible enchantment. It hasn't been printed in a while. It can give you that, exile and play. But I just think there's way better enchantments in the slot. I'd rather play something that buffs my board or gives my things trample over this. But I can understand, the thought process of why it's in here. Starstorm, there's better board wipes, especially cheaper. I I guess it's probably a reprint for its cost, but I don't really get it. Talisman, see the same reason as the Mind Stone. I don't think you need it, but if you want it, bring it back in. The only card I feel half bad cutting is Prosperous Bandit. The only reason is because, one, it's a cute card. It's a Raccoon Rogue. Look at him. But the effect's actually not half bad. A 3-mana 2/2 with First Strike that says when this creature deals combat damage to a player, you create that many trapped treasures, and you can offspring it to get another one. I like the card. I just feel like this isn't the deck for the card. The deck does have a little bit of this treasure mechanic, especially for stuff like Reign of Riches, which if you want to check out my regular brew for the deck, I talk a little bit more over there. But I just don't know if this is the deck for Prosperous Bandit. I love the card. I think it's cute. It's going to see a ton of play in other decks. I just don't know that this is the deck for it. The raccoon theme just doesn't really get love here because we're not trying to do the raccoon thing. If you're looking for the raccoon thing, I'll be brewing the raccoon commander from the set on the channel in the next week or so. And then Terramorphic Expanse and Thought Vessel, again, just taking some of that other ramp out. But let's get into our playtest. I want to kind of show you how the deck's looking to work, and maybe we can see some of our upgrades we made in the deck. Keeping a 4-lander with City on Fire, a Tali, and Explore. A little bit of ramp, some things to work into. I love it. Turn we have 3 tap lands, so let's play one of them. I'll play the Temple of Abandonment. It's going to let me scry one. Man, a Natural Growth's a great enchantment. I'm going to keep it on top. That can double the power and toughness of all our creatures, and it's more than worth it. I would go ahead and play the Forest, and I'm going to play the Explorer, which lets me draw a card and play another land, and I'll just get that Sheltered Thicket and tapped. Again, we have multiple tap lands. Let's use this turn to not only get ahead, but get another land down, which means on turn 3, I would just get Bellow down. Again, play another one of our tap lands. Unfortunately, we have lots of them in our hand. I don't really see a turn 4 play there, so I mean, or 4 mana play there. I kind of really would just play Bellow and get it ready for next turn where something like a Natural Growth could come in and attack with the haste that Bellow gives it. So on turn 4, let's play this mountain for turn. I can't Thran Dynamo and play on Natural Growth. And I can't Thran Dynamo and play anything else. So I think I'd kind of just rather play the Unnatural Growth. It's going to come down. Remember, it comes down and it's a 4/4 elemental on our turn with indestructible haste, and whenever it deals combat damage to a player, we draw a card. And this is now an 8/8 Unnatural Growth, and I'll throw it at the person I think it has the most likelihood to hit. I think there's a world where on turn 4 we have somebody who either has to put something in front of this to block it or is going to take the 8. For the purposes of this playtest, let's say it actually hits somebody for 8 and I'll draw the card. But I could see a world where somebody chump blocks it. But again, the point is, since I'm drawing off of damage, I want to slam it at somebody I think I can get the damage through or force them to take a really bad block to stop it. And Reign of Riches is a great card. We'll get to talk about that in this video as well. Turn 5, we don't draw a untapped land, but that's perfectly okay because I really like Nature's Will. So we'll go ahead and put one of these tapped guys in. 5 mana, we're just 1 mana off of a Tali. I could see the version for Reign of Riches, but I kind of like Nature's Will here. So remember, it says whenever one or more creatures we control deal damage to a player, tap all lands that player controls and then tap all of our lands. So we now have 2 creatures. Bellow is a 6/6, and that Unnatural Growth is an 8/8, and Nature's Will is an 8/8. So we have 3 creatures. I have a tough time believing that one of these 3 can't hit someone. So let's attack whoever we might want to attack. Let's just say for the purpose of that one of them does hit, so Nature's Will untaps all of our lands, and we do at least draw 1 card. I think probably more often we're going to end up drawing 2 here, but let's just say we draw 1 for the purposes of keeping it fair. I would probably go Thran Dynamo, which would become a creature, and then Reign of Riches. So Thran Dynamo probably for these 4, and then 2 red and the 3 here for Reign of Riches. Reign of Riches comes in and makes us 2 treasures. And then it says whenever we use treasures to cast a spell for the first time each turn, it gets Cascade. And this City on Fire seems like a perfect enchantment to try Cascade with. So on turn 6, provided no one has interacted with our board up to this point, no one's taken out Bellow, nobody's done anything else, I'm going to put all of my mana plus 1 treasure into this City on Fire. Now, if there's a world where somebody removed Bellow on turn 5, which is more than fair, I would just use 5 mana to get Bellow back out, and then we would have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We'd be 1 off of City on Fire. That's okay. We could just cast a Tali, use the treasure, we still cascade for a Tali, and we're in a similar spot. But let's just say, for the purpose of this playtest, no one removed Bellow. We come back to turn with everything we have already. I'm going to cascade into a Rampage Baloths. Interesting. City on Fire comes down. Now everything that we do that deals damage to a permanent or player deals triple that amount instead. And I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 attackers here, remember, because the Baloths doesn't have trample, or it doesn't have haste. All of these guys are now 8/8s. Bellow's a 6/6. I have 6 attackers. And since I'm doing triple with City on Fire, I'd probably just split them 2 at each player and tell them, basically deal with it, right? This is going to be a tough attack on turn 6 at a lot of tables. And I think this is, to me, where Bellow feels like it's going to be one of those decks that people have to be afraid of. Because with the right enchantments and the right start, I mean, yes, we have a natural growth, right? It's helping us out this game. But the more that I playtest this deck, the more that I goldfish it, the more this deck just punishes hard on turns 6 and 7 to really nail into our opponents. Here, we're looking at the neighborhood of 45 to 48 damage if our opponents don't block. If they do, they're losing the things they block with and maybe only taking 20 or 24. Remember, we took a big attack last turn, which means we have a chance to knock the table out here, knock 2 players out here. We're probably going to end up drawing 3 or 4 cards in the process. But again, this just goes to show you where I think the end game of most Bellow games are going to come to, which is you having a board full of enchantments to attack with, and now your opponents have to deal with it. But let me know, what do you think of my $50 upgrade for Bellow? Down in the comment section below. I love this deck. I said it in my brew video, which will be down in the description as well. This is a deck that I'm going to be building for myself, so I will be updating this one in the future if you're interested to see what I find for it. But let me know what you think of Bellow down in the comment section below, and I will catch you guys next time.